All right, so we're going to talk about Cramer's rule, and specifically for a 3 by 3 system. So 3 by 3 meaning we're going to have 3 variables and 3 equations. Cramer's rule only works if you have the same number of variables as equations. So you can do like a 2 by 2, a 3 by 3, a 4 by 4, all of those. We're going to talk about 3 by 3. We're not going to write down a lot. We're just going to write down these 3 things, and I think you'll know how to use it just based off of this. So before, when we had a 2 by 2, we said that x equals what? Yeah, d sub x over d. That's true for a 3 by 3. Y equals d sub y over d, right? The only difference with the 3 by 3 is we're going to put in a third variable, and we're going to call it z. dz over d. Then you reach the end of the alphabet, so if you do a fourth one, you got to go back and start at w. Generally, 3 is about what it's going. All right. Huh? So we're working with 4w.
So you're going backwards.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
You do v and then u and all that. But generally, 3 is about the max, so I guess whoever decided, and then we're going to start using variables, start at x was a good place. You ever thought about that, why x is always an unknown variable? All right, so this next rule we're going to write for a 3 by 3 Cramer's rule. So just like before, when we do d sub x, we just replace the x column with whatever the answers were. D sub y, you just replace the y column. But now we're just going to replace the z column with whatever the answers are. Now these problems look kind of daunting when you see it, because you got all this stuff happening here. If you want to write down one of them, you can, but mostly what I would write down is what we're going to call an augmented matrix in a set. So if you want to write down that problem, you can, but I wouldn't try to write down more than one of them because there's just a lot of stuff going on there. These x, y's, and z's, and then numbers that go along with all of them. It makes it pretty confusing. As you can see, we've got 3 variables, x, y, and z, and we got 3 equations to match. There's a few things I want you to always write. We're going to do most of these on our calculator because given that formula, we would need a d, so we need a d determinant, we need a dx, a dy, and dz. So that would be 4 of those determinants that we just did. 4 of those 3 by 3s. That would take a long time, and it'd be really easy to mess up on one of them, and then it would mess up the whole answer. So it's not really reasonable to do 4 of these by hand, so that's why we're going to use our calculator. But the first step we're going to do is write something called an augmented matrix. Basically, that means we're going to get rid of all the letters. Letters are helpful, but they can make it more confusing because you just see all this stuff in here. So we're going to write a matrix, and we're just going to drop all the letters and also drop the equal signs. It's going to look like this. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. And then instead of the equal signs, when you do an augmented matrix, you just draw a straight line down. It kind of separates, these are the coefficients, and then you got the answers over here. 6, -5, 14. It's called an augmented matrix. So I do want you to write this on all of them. And I would just write this rather than even just writing the original problem, because this is going to be a lot easier to work with than this, right? It's a lot easier to see these numbers than if you're trying to sort through the x's, the y's, and the z's there. So we had an x column, a y column, and a z column. And then you got your answers over there. These are the coefficients, and then the other things. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is just d. You're going to need your calculator. We're going to do this a lot today. Get used to typing things in your calculator. D I'm not going to write out because we know what D is. That's just going to be the coefficients there. If you didn't get this yesterday, make sure you're getting it today. Like I said, you're going to have to do this a lot in the problems. So we're going to go to second matrix. And then go over to edit. And we want to do a 3 by 3. And we're going to type in this part here, coefficient part. After you type that in, you want to do second and then quit. So go into mode. And then you go back to the matrix screen, second matrix. Then you go over to math. Oops, and then select determinant. Go back to matrix screen again. And then select matrix A. And then enter. And you'll get faster and faster as you do. All right, what do we get? -3. I'll write that. I'm going to get -3. Make sure you're doing it. Hold on. All right, the next thing we're going to do is d sub x. This one, you are going to have to write it out because there's actually programs that can just solve this without doing anything. Like Photomath can just do this on its own. So I need to make sure that you know what you're doing here. So you are going to need to write out d sub x. When we do d sub x, we're going to replace this whole x column with this column over here. The same as we did if it was a 2 by 2. So 6, -5, 14. And then we got 1, -2, 3. And then you're going to type that one in. So we just swapped out the x column with the answers. And you go to your second matrix and just edit the same matrix. And you just have to change out the first column. So change that first column and then do it again. Second matrix over the math. You have to go over here. Enter. Okay. All right, what do we get on this one? Yeah. Yeah, what are we gonna say? I can talk about that. What do you guys get for the determinant of x? You get 3 again? What do you guys get? You got -3. You get -3. Alright, so now we're going to do d sub y. So d sub y, we're going to keep the x row that it was initially, 1, 3, 1. Now we're going to swap out the y's with 6, -5, and 14. We'll keep the original z's, -1, 1, -2. Now go back to the matrix. Add that again. And then quit. Let's do the math. Anybody get that one? Mm-hmm. We'll do it 9 for that. Good. Now we've got one more to do. D sub z. Now we're going to keep the x's and the y's and swap out the z's. So again, on your assignment, you need to make sure that you're writing this. You gotta write out this stuff on the problems you're gonna do. You can imagine if we had to calculate all of these determinants by hand, how long that would take. And initially, Gabriel Cramer, when he came up with this, did not have the luxury of a TI-84 calculator, so he had to do all these by hand. Take a while. I think it was about 100 years later when they came up with the first calculators, but didn't have anything like this, obviously, at that time. So we get 6 is what I got. And these all seem to divide pretty evenly, so that's good. Now we're going to write out our answers. X is dx over d, -3 over -3. That's 1. Y is -9 over -3. Just 3. And z is 6 over -3. -2. So write our answer. It's called an ordered triple. 1, 3, -2. And the last thing that's a good thing to do is just check your answer in one of the equations. The top one would be the easiest. Really, you wouldn't be certain you would check in all of them, but it's a good idea to check in one of them. So if we were to plug this in to the top equation, 1 plus 3 minus -2 should equal 6. And you do get 1 plus, this becomes a plus, so it becomes 1 plus 5, so you do get 6 equals 6. I mean, this is a good solution. Again, you could try it in all of them, but generally just checking in one is a good idea. Make sure it works. Right. Let's look at one more here. Actually, let's do this one first. Now, again, don't write out this problem. It's going to take too long. Don't write it out. Same with when you do them out of your book. You don't want to write out this whole thing. There's actually a greater chance you would mess up when you try to rewrite that whole thing. So what you would want to do is just write the augmented matrix. We will just write the numbers 1, 3, and 2. So that's going to be what you want to write out. And then you got everything organized through different. So we're going to start by finding D. Give that a shot. What did we get for D? Life. And what did you get? Yeah, 0. Okay. So if D is 0, then what? Yeah, this one has no solution because all of the answers are going to be undefined. No solution. So you stop there. On 2 of your problems, this is the case. 2 of your problems, there's no solution. So if you get D equals 0, you don't need to do anything else because whatever you get for x, y, and z, they're going to be divided by 0. So it's not going to work. This problem has no solution. There's no set of 3 numbers that satisfies all 3 of these. All right, let's try one that you do get a solution. It's very awesome. We'll do together, and then you have a lot of time to work on this. So we'll do our augmented matrix here. Always check D first. You don't have to write out the determinant for D because I know you're just going to be using that one. All right, and we get D. Yep, 22. So then we need to write out D sub x. We swap out the x column. Negative 3, negative 7, 4. 2, negative 1, 1. It does seem like it's just a lot of typing in a calculator, I know. It's a little bit tedious. Anybody got these next? Yep. This is Y is Y. Y's. Once you understand this rule, it really isn't hard to do. And you can solve some pretty complex equations with it, so it is a good tool. Let's do 11 for these Y. One more DZ. Swap Z's. All right, and then you get 22 for D sub Z, so then we can get our three answers. X is going to be negative 66 over 22. And that's negative 3. Y is going to be 11 over 22. So you always want to just do simplest form of fraction, don't do decimal. Goes to half. And then DZ, 22 over 22, 1. Negative 3. And you can also, again, check that. So we give us negative 3, plug it in. Negative 3 plus half of 2 is 1. minus 1 for z. That gives you negative 3. Negative 3 is negative 3. What? You guys feel pretty good about that? Do it. If you, so I'm going to give you a lot of time to work on it, so you can use these calculators. If you don't get it finished, what you can still do is you can still just set these up. If you don't have a calculator to use at home, you can still set these up this way, and then use a different tool. Somebody actually, I caught some people in the last class using photo math for these on like the delta math. Obviously, is not good. But I guess with an exception would be if you don't have a graphing calculator, you still need to set these up, and then you could do something like that to solve it. So, does anybody ever use photomath? It's okay. Never used it before. I never used it prior to yesterday, but there was people that apparently, like I said, used it on Delta Math. It actually is a pretty neat tool. So I downloaded it, and you can actually just take a picture of this equation with it, and then it gives you different options of ways to solve it. And Cramer tool is one of them. And then it'll even show you the steps. So we'll give you these 22, negative 66, 11, 22, and so obviously don't use it, and you can't use it on a test. So what I would advise using it in most cases. But if you don't have a calculator and you would want to just set these up and then do it from there, I guess. It is a neat tool, but don't use it often. So here's your problems. Now there's 5 problems. 2 of them that you actually get no solution. There's only going to be 3 of them that you have to go through all the steps. It does take a little bit of time to type them into your calculator, but at least get used to make sure you can do that, because when we have a test over this, you're going to have to know how to do it with that TI-83 or 4 calculator. So make sure you do that. If you want to work with someone, great. We've got close to 20 minutes, and hopefully you can get most of those done. And again, there's two no solutions on it. So if you get the D for D equals 0, then you can stop there and just say no solution. But you do need to make sure you're showing this amount of work. So show that you're doing the augmented matrix, the dx, the dy, and the d. And it should be up there. I can pull up the problems as well.